Welcome to A Matter of Perspective with Judge Derwin Webb. I am Derwin Webb, coming to you from the Fraser History Museum. You know, this is a special time. It's a special day. This is our 50th episode, so we wanted to bring on someone that was important to not only me, but to the program, University of Louisville, but someone you don't really talk about a whole bunch. Before I introduce our guest today, I want to read something to you. I got a chance to go back and talk to some of our former teammates and ask them about you. So I got a couple of things I want to read to you. Everett Sullivan said, Rome was a professional scorer, a baseline assassin. He is humble off the court, but has an inner confidence in how he carries himself. Has always been a fearless competitor as a player, overall a great guy and respected by everyone. Cornelius Holden said, perfect, I could not have said it any better. We were very fortunate to play with such a loyal group of guys that loved U of L basketball and its tradition. You can't find anyone that respected and had the passion for the game of basketball like Romey. James Brewer said, Rome, a.k.a. Big Brother, was a phenomenal scorer inside and out, straight killer on the court. He was someone you loved to play with but hated to guard him on the other side. One of the most talented teammates, Rome was a competitor on the court, but off the court, he was a great big brother who loved his teammates. His ceiling was extremely high. Things he could do on the basketball court were very impressive. Baseline to baseline, he was money. It was a pleasure playing alongside him. Ladies and gentlemen, it's my pleasure to introduce our guest today, Mr. Jerome Harmon. Brother Harmon, welcome to this show.
And well, thanks for having me. I'm glad to be here.
Man, I've known you for years.
Yes.
And when we had this conversation to talk about you, we were talking about, U of L and things like that. And recently we had all the basketball players get together, and you came out and just said some things that kind of touched me. That's why I wanted to have you on the show today. But before we get to your story, your history and things like that, why don't you tell us about your high school career? For me, you were a legend because I read stories about you averaging 4 dunks a game and taking over things. Tell us about your high school career. What was it like playing basketball in Gary, Indiana?
It was rough playing there. Like, if you didn't go out and play with confidence, you might as well don't even step on the court. And I'll tell you a little story. Like, when I was from my 8th grade to my 9th grade year, the varsity coach said, I'm going to have you come out. He said you probably won't make the team, but I'm going to have you come out anyway just to see what you could do, assess your talent. Long story short, I was a 4-year starter.
So let me ask you this. Was basketball your only sport, or did you play anything else?
Well, I was actually better growing up in baseball and football, but decided basketball. Once I started getting super duper tall, that was the sport I had to stick with.
Was it something that just grabbed you, or you were good at everything else? Because I know what kind of athlete you are, but what made it basketball more than anything? Just your height, or what?
Well, actually, it was my father. He said, "You're growing. We just gonna stick with basketball," because he thought that I probably get hurt in football, so my football career could be short. And baseball, for me, baseball was just too slow. Like, it might be a game, you might get two at bats. I like to hit the ball. So, that's when I was like, nah, I give up baseball. It was just too slow. Sometimes you're in the outfield, or like I played third base, shortstop. Sometimes the ball didn't get hit to me all game, so I'm just sitting there. So
it was kind of boring too.
It was boring. Yeah, it wasn't as fast paced as like football and basketball.
Okay.
So, yeah.
So as you were growing up, obviously you said that you liked basketball because you were starting to grow. Obviously, as a kid, you had your heroes and people you wanted to be like. Did you try and pattern your game after anybody when you were growing up?
Well, actually, my favorite player growing up, that first player that caught my eye was Magic Johnson. That's why I always wore 32 throughout. Because he could do everything. He was a point guard at 6'9". It was like he had eyes in the back of his head, And I remember when he played the one year, Kareem, I forget what year it was, but Kareem got hurt. And he played center. He went from point guard to playing center just to help the team win the championship. So I thought that was outstanding. But I actually took a pieces out of different players' game, like Lynn Byers, guys like that, David Thompson, because my game was nothing like Magic. I mean, because, Magic couldn't jump. He might have dunked 5 times his whole career, And I was a high flyer. So I kind of wanted to be like him in the sense of, like, getting other people the ball. But I knew at the end of the day I was a scorer. I was just a gifted scorer. So that's when I started, like, looking at players like I said, Lynn Byers, David Thompson. Those guys were, like, really good dunkers, jumpers, scorers. So I kind of just took a piece from certain players and just went out and, went to the park and just worked on it.
Let me ask you this. Did you ever get to the point, let me strike that question. When did you believe that you could become a professional basketball player? About how old were you?
Actually, probably my junior year in high school, because it was like the game slowed down in a sense, and it was just, I don't want to sound cocky and arrogant, but it was kind of easy to do things that for other players it was difficult. So for me, scoring the ball, it was just so easy to score on people, just to elevate over them and score. So I want to say that's what.
Let me ask you a question. Did you have a backup plan at that point, or was it NBA or bust?
At that time, I wanted to be a chef also. My son will tell you, I'm a pretty good cook. So, like middle school, actually, strike that, 6th grade. So I used to just go in my mom would be making dinner, and I would just ask, could I come in and watch? So I learned a lot from my mom in that sense. And she loved doing it. So I was like, hey, maybe I could be because I used to always tell her I was going to open up a restaurant one day if I didn't play basketball.
So you go from your junior year to your senior year, you become an Indiana All-Star. And back then, being an All-Star was a privilege, was an honor.
Yes.
Probably should have been Mr. Basketball, but we won't go back. We won't talk about that. Should have been Mr. Basketball that year, in my opinion. But you go through the recruiting process. Now, you're a McDonald's All-American. You're an Indiana All-Star. I'm sure that other than University of Louisville, there's some other programs coming at you. Talk about the recruiting process for you.
Well, it was like one big typhoon tornado, because the Dukes, the UNLVs at the time, the powerhouses, you name it, I got letters from them. Like now, they just get emails and all that stuff. But I had like leaf and lawn bags in my room full of like letters from every school you can imagine. So from the Dukes, the North Carolinas, on down.
Top 5 schools that you came down to.
DePaul, Purdue. I actually verbally committed to Purdue, but I'll tell you about that story. UNLV, let's see. Actually, it was just those. Like, the rest of them, I was just like, I was just the type that if I had a few schools that I like, I'm just going to stick with those. I'm not just going to be out there and, okay, what do you have to offer? What do you have to offer?
Right.
I just wasn't that type. But it was pretty much DePaul, Purdue, and UNLV.
Okay. What made you choose Louisville?
Coach Wade Houston.
Talk about that relationship.
He's like a father figure to me. And going back to the story, I had already verbally committed to Purdue, and I said, well, I'll take one more visit. My father's like, what the heck? It's like, just like a little mini vacation for the weekend. Might as well go. So I came to the University of Louisville, and Wade showed me around, showed me the city. Also, Robbie Valentine showed me around. And I just, I don't know. It was just something about here that I liked. It wasn't too big, wasn't too small. It was bigger than Gary, of course, but it wasn't big like Chicago, which I live like 45 minutes from Chicago.
Right.
So, but talking with Wade, this is what made me like decide to come here, he showed me a schedule of like televised, nationally televised games. And he showed me where Purdue had 2. Louisville was on every weekend. He said, so if your ambition is to go to the NBA someday, don't you want to get seen? And that stuck with me on my trip back home. And by the time I got back home, I just told my parents I'm coming to the University of Louisville.
How did Purdue take it?
Oh, I couldn't step on campus. It was like, oh, it was bad. It was, seriously, it was really, really bad. Like you said,
I know the
as a
coaching
judge,
staff. I know the coaching staff back then, so I know they probably made it tough on you. Yeah,
it was all type of hate mail I got at home, everything. Yeah, it was crazy.
Okay, so you commit to the University of Louisville, and you actually come here, actually arrive on campus, and then you are ruled academically ineligible. Tell me about your first year here. How tough was it?
Oh, it was tough because I was, I stayed in the gym 24/7, and not to be able to play the game I love was really hard. And it sucks because the tests were biased because I had like a 3.0 grade point average. It was just I didn't pass the test. So, I mean, it was just like the rug being pulled out from under me, not being able to play. But, being around you guys, LA, Corn, and those guys, it helped it become much more easy because we were like brothers,
right.
It wasn't like, oh, you're not playing, so you guys shun me. I will see you next year, that type of deal. You guys embraced me. Felton, Spencer embraced me. You guys were like brothers. So even though I couldn't be there with you guys, I was still there in spirit.
Right.
So it was tough, but I was able to get through it.
Well, let me ask you this. And some people don't really understand what it's like to have to sit out like that. How did it affect you emotionally and, more importantly, academically?
Well, I mean, emotionally, I was just a wreck because, like I said, not being able to play ball, that was all I wanted to do at the time, just play. Get out on the court and show everybody what I could do. So emotionally, I was a wreck. Academically, I don't know. I guess when I came here, I took things for granted. As far as okay, you're a well-known player. You can coast on through. So, I kind of coasted a little bit. But, I got the job done, so I was able to play eventually. So,
So you talk about you were able to play eventually. Tell me about what it was like when you actually got on that basketball court with that uniform on. What was it like that first year playing?
Well, I'm gonna go back if you don't mind. I'll go back. I wasn't able to play the following year because I had back surgery.
That's right.
So I missed my first 2 years playing here, and that was worse than the academics because I wasn't able to physically play. Not being able to physically play and watching you guys on TV wanting to be out there and help my brothers. That was worse than my first year, to be honest.
Okay, so you finally do get on the court, but let me ask you this. Going through that time between your senior year and actually being able to play a couple of years later, how was it dealing with the fans and the foes, as I like to call them? There are some people that say they're University of Louisville fans, but they're going to dog you every chance they get to.
Yeah,
so how was that dealing with them during that time? And we'll talk about stuff later, but how was it dealing with them during your transition into actually playing?
Well, actually, at the time, the fans were pretty great. They were all supportive of me because, coming to play here for the Derby Classic All-Star Game, those people, they got to see me play, so they knew what I can do, and they were just like, whenever you're able to play, we're gonna, we're ready, So it wasn't like, oh, you're stupid, and those first couple of years, oh, you didn't pass the test, that type of thing. I actually got embraced by the fans at that time.
Right. Okay, and we'll talk about the next time. So you play well.
Yes.
The first year you actually play, you averaged close to 15 points a game coming off the bench. Should have been a starter. I'm not going to talk about that.
Yeah, correct.
We'll talk about that later.
Yes.
But we lose to Ball State.
Correct.
And you tell everyone shortly after that, it's time to go. What went into your decision to leave?
Well, actually, if I'm going to be totally honest, I actually wasn't ready to leave at that time. But because of the decisions I made, I was actually had to go. Like, it was pretty much, the university was like, hey, you need to leave here. So I pretty much was forced into it. And they had every right to do so because I just wasn't doing the things I should have done at the time. So
I'm glad you're talking. No one knows this. No one ever talks about this.
Yeah. At the time, like, they was like, hey, you got to go. Pretty much put that big boot out, get out of here.
Well,
and it was and at the time I didn't understand because I thought at the time just because I was a really good player, I was bigger than everything else. I was bigger than the university. Like, I could do what I want, and they showed me, and it was a hell of a wake up call, and that helped send me on the right direction, like moving forward in my life, in my career.
Draft day comes along. You don't get drafted. What were you thinking at that point?
It was funny because I actually should have got drafted. Detroit Pistons was I think it was the first pick of the second round, and that was guaranteed, you know. And they called my agent and I. We talked to them, and they said they were. And then the first pick came and went. And I mean, I kind of don't like to talk about it because I kind of like swept it under the rug, but the word got out that like I was uncoachable, you know, because they're gonna do their checking before they bring you into their team.
Right.
So the word got out I was uncoachable, this yada yada yada. So I didn't get drafted.
So you take an opportunity to go overseas.
Correct.
Tell us about your time overseas.
I was great. It was great. Like, I can actually say every place I played, I loved every minute of it.
Talk about some of those places.
Well,
Because, you know, honestly, we a lot of people don't know what happened to you after college. So talk about your
yeah,
professional
I kind of like distanced myself because for I want to say about maybe 4 years, 5 years, I wouldn't even watch a Louisville game. Like, I was like that upset with the university when I should have been upset at myself because of the choices I made, you know. And I didn't even watch a game. So, you know, my first stop was the Philippines, and it was different, you know, different culture. You know, I was kind of I'm the youngest of 5, so I was kind of like the baby of the bunch. So leaving to go overseas was a big step, you know. But, you know, I got through it. The first month or so was, it was like if I'd have had a round trip ticket, I'd have been back on that, back on that plane coming back. So thank God they didn't do that. But it was great, like, but it was just so freaking hot. Like, it was Florida hot. Oh, that's nothing compared to the Philippines over there. And, you know, the language barrier, too. Like, now you got smartphones and stuff that you can actually, you know, learn.
Right.
Like, over there, you had to learn on the fly.
Right.
And folks will get a kick out of this, but every place I went, the first thing I learned was all the curse words. Just in case somebody was cursing at me, somebody said something, so you know
what they were saying.
Yeah, so, and it happened, and I'm like, I turned around and said it back to him. They was like, oh. They like, I didn't know he knew that. So, you know.
Best place you played overseas?
Oh. I can't say one. It was like 3. Well, Switzerland, Taiwan. People gonna be like, what, Taiwan? Oh, that was the most Americanized place I've been, because I was next to like an army base, like where we were stationed. So you can go buy American goods, like Tide. You can buy steak. You can buy American pork chops. So it was like Americanized store where you kind of like a mini Walmart, type of deal, and that was great. Like being able to talk to people in English, So there, hold on, I said what? Switzerland, Taiwan, and France.
France.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
You get an opportunity to come back to the States and play in the league briefly. Talk about being in the NBA.
Well, actually playing in the CBA was great. Like, it was great getting back to play with guys that I played with and played with and against in high school. And, like I played with the Fort Wayne Fury. And like Lloyd Daniels, he and I were the two leading scorers of the whole league. 1-2 punch on the same team. That's kind of rare, And from there, I went up to the 76ers. I forget where he went, but it was a whole different world going to play.
How so?
Because like everything was so professional, everything was so well ran. I should say, like you had your own rooms where other places you had to. You might be three of you guys in one place, and there it was just like wow. And just to be there for the short time I was, I wouldn't trade it for the world. It was and then the cities I played in. I played against the Lakers, and that's my number one team. Period. Because of Magic. So just going to play in that arena, it was great. It was great. I wouldn't trade it for the world.
Now, you talked about your distance from the University of Louisville for a while. You recently reconnected with the university and
Correct.
had an opportunity to speak to some of the former players. What made you kind of speak up at the last meeting about your story? What prompted you to do that?
Well, actually, I wasn't going to speak up at all, because so many people had went before me. And then Sherry Semenick brought up Felton and told his, like how he came from, like he just put in the work, put in the time, did everything he was supposed to, succeed as far as like with the University of Louisville and in the NBA. And then I was like, well, these kids need to hear, well, not kids, these young men need to hear the other side. Because I was a guy with all the talent in the world and just didn't do the things I should have done, So, and, I honestly believe I could have been an NBA All-Star. I mean, you played against me, and I'm sure many other people that played against me know. So when you don't do what you're supposed to, then you end up in the spot I was in, where you a journeyman overseas and, all over the place, So I thought I should share that to help them don't make the mistakes I did, so to speak. And, hopefully, they took it in and, like I said, won't make the mistakes I did.
If you had to do it all over again, would you change anything? What would you change differently?
Well, for the longest, I always thought about, I would have, I'd have did better in school and all this stuff. But I honestly believe that the man upstairs had a plan for me. God had a plan for me, because I have my son now. And before he came along, I had so many regrets. Nights I couldn't sleep because I knew I should have done things the right way. And, I'd have got the fruits of my labor, the popularity I actually should have got. But after he came along, I was like, that was the final plan for me, to have my son and raise him and show him what not to do to succeed in life, because he's a really good basketball player.
I was going to ask you have your son now. What type of advice or guidance are you trying to give him now?
Well, just not to make the mistakes I do and did, and to work hard. If he want to succeed, he needs to put in the work. And he's doing better now, but at one time he was just like, because everybody come up to him, yes, your dad was a bad man. He was really good, all this type stuff. So in my opinion, he'll disagree, but I just thought he felt like I'm Jerome Harmon's son, so I'll be just fine. When you actually got to get out there and put in the work if you want to, succeed, because like I didn't have half the talent he has. Oh, he can do it all. And I was just like, I played hard, I could score the ball, but he can handle the ball. He does stuff that I just sit back and scratch my head at times like, man, I wish I could have done that at 14.
I was going to say, sounds like a proud father over here.
Very proud father, and he's, doing really well in school. Just got 1C, and he's at Atherton. So, and that's a really good school. That's one of the top schools in the state.
Right.
So for him, not making the mistakes I made as far as school and taking it serious is a big thing to me, because I don't want him to go down the path I went through.
Final question. If you had a chance to talk to a Louisville fan right now in front of you, because I haven't seen any interviews. I tried to do some research, see if I could find some interviews of you post U of L. Haven't found anything. Let's say that you had a chance to talk to U of L fans today. What would you want the U of L fans to know about you now?
Well, just that, everything I went through was, in my opinion, was for a reason. It just wasn't meant to be for me to succeed like some of the other greats. For me to be humble, because I was like kind of arrogant in a sense, but it wasn't arrogant as far as when I was out in public with people like thought I was better than you or anything like that. It was just like I was arrogant in a sense that I was a really good player and I knew it. And I thought all I had to do was play basketball to succeed. And it was more than just basketball. You got to go to class. You got to respect your coaches. You got to respect your teammates, all of the above. So that's what I want them to know, that it was a growing experience, but now, I'm just fine, because I'm sure plenty of them probably is like, he's probably out doing drugs. And, I'm actually coaching AAU basketball. Been doing that for the last 8 years or so. So, I'm doing okay for myself. So if they want to know how I'm doing pretty good for myself.
And I'll say this too. We're in our 50s now.
Yes.
All the stuff that you were talking about, you were like 19.
Yes.
So it was
correct.
a long time ago.
18, 19, 20. Well, some people are just knuckleheads. I was a knucklehead.
But let me say this as we close. I know for me, and talking to you and watching you play and all the stuff that we went through when we were in college, I can say this along with some other players. We were jealous of your talent. I hated to check you. I would watch you on the sidelines here and there. I'll go try and pick that up. Couldn't do all the stuff you were trying to do, even if I was practicing it. But when you think about some of the former players and some of the great players that played for Louisville, your name may not be up in those rafters or on the scoring champions and things like that. But without a doubt, not only me, other players have said this, you were probably one of the best players we ever had to play for the University of Louisville. So I just want to say that so that you can hear from me, a former player. You may not hear from the fans because they didn't see that or they don't see it in the rafters now. But for the people that play with you, we thought you were great.
Yeah, well, I really appreciate that, because coming from a person like you, yourself, and the others, because I don't go out considering myself like I'm this and I'm that. I just let the other people, speak for it. That's what I like when it comes to my son. I don't go and tell him how great I was, all that. But other people do, and then I'll say, see, because I don't want to be like a bragging father type of deal.
Right, right.
So I really appreciate you guys saying that. Really.
Well, I just want to say I appreciate you coming on here because I thought it was important for people to hear some of the things that you were talking about to the current players. I think it was important for people to know now who you are today, not who you were 30 years ago, but who you are today and the things that you've learned along the way.
Yes, I mean, I agree because, I've been wanting to do it. Like, I've been wanting to do interviews and stuff, but I was the type like, no, it's not time. But after hearing Felton's story, I knew it was time. And thanks for having me. I really appreciate being here.
And I appreciate you being here as well. We like to close this show on one simple thing. It's not a matter of what you say. It's not a matter of what I think. At the end of the day, it's all a matter of perspective. Brother Harmon, thanks for being on here today.
Thanks for having me.